Greetings and salutations, fellow human beings, and welcome to the Wonderlands. Today, we have a wonderful podcast for you. I'm Sleb, and with me I've got Kaz Narius.
Ooh, this is sure gonna be magical, isn't it?
Oh, I got the pork chopper.
Hi.
And everyone's favorite player 4, the nameless guest.
Can I leave now?
No, we're in the Wonderlands.
everybody.
Kaz, roll for initiative.
Ooh, hold on. I usually have a dice around. Hold on. Fuck. This needs to be organic. Dice. Hold on, get this ASMR in here. Oh shit, it's all falling all over the place. Hold on. Okay, 16. With my modifier, that's 10.
Nice. You got it. Kaz, how do you feel about the Wonderlands?
You know, it's a pretty sweet game. It's hard to really say anything particularly negative about it. I think one thing we need to mention, obviously, is that not all of us have actually beat this game. I'm level 30. Our nameless guest just beat it. Sliv, you're
18.
and Pork Chopper.
I think I'm like, I don't know, 13 or 14 or some shit like that, I think.
So this isn't necessarily one of those like full-on in-depth thunderstorms. It's more just like a starting thoughts on after the first week of launch. While we had a fucking horrible time playing this game on launch, pretty much all of its issues have been settled, and it's about as fun as pretty much everyone expected it to be. Borderlands 3 is a good game with a dogshit story, so, it's not hard to imagine that when you take the gameplay of that game and you put it into this with an actually, alright story, it's a good time. It's just generally good time. So yeah, I like Wonderlands. Sliv, what do you think of Wonderlands?
I'm really liking Wonderlands. I didn't play a lot of Borderlands 3. I didn't like the humor it was going for, so I kind of skipped out on that for the most part. But Wonderlands is definitely scratching that itch for me. However, biggest issue I had with it so far is starting weekend.
Yeah.
By Sunday night, 4 days after it launched in our region, it still was having Gearbox fucking server issues. And it shouldn't. 4 days after launch, you should have had your A-team already working on that and getting that fixed. That is inexcusable for 5th game in the franchise. And this isn't a small company that developed this game. It was like an indie developer, first online netcode. Okay, that I understand. But this is Gearbox we're talking about. Their 5th Borderlands game. Like, come on.
Actually, this is Gearbox we're talking about. Gearbox largely doesn't actually make that great of games. Borderlands is like an accident that it's as good as it is when you compare it to everything else Gearbox has. So I think they maybe did have their A-team on fixing the online, and that's just how good their A-team was.
I just want to point out that other than shit games like Battleborn, their Brothers in Arms series was fucking mint, okay?
Rit isn't here to talk about that. Alright, how'd you feel about Wonderlands?
I think it's really good. I am enjoying it. I have one really significant issue with it that going in, I didn't think I was going to have, but I do enjoy it. Like, I've still been having a lot of fun with it. They've gone to really great lengths to make this its own franchise, right? Because they've said, like, it's not a Borderlands game. Wonderlands is its own new franchise. So they've added the overworld, which is sort of like older RPGs like Final Fantasy, as well. It's like a tabletop RPG with your little characters and stuff. I like that. That's really cool. They've added melee weapons, they've added spells, and, the constantly changing landscape whenever Tiny Tina, has like a new idea or something. That's all really cool and very unlike Borderlands. Why the fuck are we still relying on guns? That's my big problem. Because every second I'm playing the game, every second of combat, it just feels like Borderlands with, different paint. Like the spells are just grenades. The melee weapons, it's relegated to just a button. It's still just basically the melee from the Borderlands games. If this is a new franchise, why does it feel like we're playing Borderlands? I mean, every time we go to play it, we literally say we're going to play Borderlands.
Yes.
I don't consider this to be like a real problem because that was really obvious what they were going for from the beginning. Was that this was a fantasy themed Borderlands? They literally called it Wonderlands so they could still effectively have the same name. It utilizes a character from Borderlands for its narrative. So I can see why they wouldn't change too much from it. Also, this game is almost like to a point a little bit of like, I don't know, an asset flip. Not quite. There's so many new assets here. But they basically just took all the code, like the combat code for Borderlands 3, and put it in this new setting. So it's kind of like an easy game for them to make, I guess.
I get what you're saying, but the problem is the game makes fun of that. Like, there's a point near the beginning of the game where you need to blow up a gate, and so Tiny Tina or whoever says that you're going to pull out C4, and they literally do, and then they make fun of it, and they retcon it basically to have dynamite that they call Fantasy 4, so that it's more fantasy themed. How are you
So,
going to make fun of shit like that, but then still have the same normal guns from fucking Borderlands?
so I have to ask, would you feel better if none of the guns looked like the guns from Borderlands, but they still shot like them?
No. So there are guns in the game. For example, there's the pistols and the snipers that use the crossbow, crossbolts.
Yeah, yeah.
Those are fine. But like, I have an actual shotgun that's literally a straight up shotgun. I've got an SMG that's just a straight up SMG. Those are the ones that I kind of take issue with because I went in knowing there was going to be guns, but every time I'm using those, it's like this doesn't feel right. Like if we're pretending to be in a fantasy land, playing what's essentially Dungeons and Dragons, and we're focusing on all this fancy shit and like fucking dragons and wyverns and stuff, we shouldn't have the guns.
The issue with that is that for like the full experience, like what even is the fantasy equivalent of a shotgun? What even is the fantasy equivalent of a sniper rifle? I guess a bow and arrow,
Uh,
but
well, no. Like they have crossbolt versions of the sniper, but yeah, we could have had an actual like a really big crossbow. We could have had an actual bow and arrow for the shotgun. It could have been replaced with something like a blunderbuss. Like there
sure.
are other types of weapons that they could have used, or even just instead of making the melee weapons a button, put a fucking sword or like a mace or something in my hand.
I think the main thing is they wanted to keep the general gameplay of Borderlands. They didn't want to change that too drastically. They wanted people to have the general guns that I mean, like, even the crossbow guns that you mentioned, they're just normal pistols. There's like a bit of an extra bonus, like crossbow weapons do more damage based on how many crossbows you have in the enemy. I think you're asking for something that's fundamentally different from what they actually wanted to do. Well, you say this is a new IP. It's not. It is clearly a Borderlands spin-off.
No. Okay, I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's not a spin-off. What I'm saying is they've gone into this very specifically saying that this is not a Borderlands game, it's a Borderlands spin-off, and that Wonderlands is a new second franchise for them. But it seems like they wanted to play it too safe because they weren't sure if they could actually go all the way because maybe Borderlands players won't like it if we don't have, regular Borderlands guns. But it's like you have this idea but you don't want to follow through with it.
I'll admit that there should have been some more variety in their guns, some more like fantasy theming stuff. But I think they wanted a bit of the strange juxtaposition of you're using guns in the fantasy setting. Also, because Gearbox, I just don't think they're that competent. This is the best they could do. Better to go with what they know than to fucking try something out. But there really should have been like just a bow class of weapon. Like, you would have pistols, SMGs, bows, and they should have gone.
Bosses. Yeah.
Yeah, they should have gone like weirder with, or more fantasy with some of the weapons. I admit that sometimes I am just using a gun that is literally just like Hyperion SMG from the last game.
Yeah.
There is no difference, and that's a little lame. But I also don't really mind it too much. It doesn't bother me really because I just don't expect. I didn't expect much from this other than Borderlands 3 with a slight fantasy coat.
Yeah,
Sorry.
like I think the guns, they definitely should have been different. I think there should be some in-universe reason why the guns are the way they are.
I mean,
You're in a
there
fantasy
is.
setting. There's magic. Like you could have had some magic bullshit with the guns. It's like look at some of the shotguns, for example. They use bullets. The reload chamber is some sort of magic crystal, and you put your fucking fairy dust on it to reload. It's like
I like that.
do
personally.
something with that. Why is it a bullet counter for that, for example, instead of like a draining like thing, right? Like you have to enchant the fucking things. Like do
Yeah.
something with the idea instead of being like, oh, it's like this magic dust gives it however many bullets. Okay, make it like a declining meter, and then it's like, oh, it has to recharge. It's like when you're playing in a regular game and you're using a Gatling gun and it overheats, like that kind of idea, right? Like you've depleted the crystals, you have to re-enchant them.
Well,
Like,
they do have that with the Skulldigger
Yeah.
weapon, like the Skulldigger, which is just the bandit weapon or the Children of the Vault weapons from Borderlands 3. So they couldn't have done that in another fashion because they already had it assigned to a brand. And the brands are literally just ripped from Borderlands 3 with a different name.
I think they should have built. We know who Hyperion is. We know Torg. We know Doll. Just making them Doll with an extra letter, that doesn't make it fantasy themed. This is a spin-off. You have all the freedom in the world. Make them new brands. Like,
That's kind of my
you're
issue,
building
yeah.
up like this whole kingdom in the Wonderlands. Like, there has to be weaponsmiths. Like, something unique. But no, like Hyperion, Borderlands.
I can agree with that to a point, but I think the reason they kept that is because it's not a fantasy game. Like, we're not actually in a fantasy world. We're in a tabletop game run by a person who lives in the Borderlands world.
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely see a DM going like,
This is the Walmart of guns.
yeah, they're taking something that they know in their real life and like slightly fantasizing it a little bit. And thus it kind of makes sense why some of the brands are just so on the nose, especially with their naming. Like Hyperion just becomes like Hyperius because I guess Tina's not as creative as she would like to appear to be.
Like, I can't blame Tina as a character. Like, she's supposed to be a child, so...
Yeah.
But, like, if you're
No,
trying
no.
to make this a spin-off, like, go broader with it. Go bigger.
Yeah, because the thing is, with this being a spin-off, you're free of any limitations that you have in the Borderlands franchise. So to not actually take that opportunity to go a little bit farther, it just feels weird, you know, because I feel like I'm playing a really good Borderlands DLC, rather than playing something that is supposedly a new franchise. Spin-off, but new franchise.
I don't know. For me, that like it didn't necessarily need to be anything more than that, though. Like a really good Borderlands DLC is still a really good time for 30 hours. But yes, I agree that sure, they could have gone farther with the flavor of the world, but in terms of like how much like more or less I care about the game and like enjoy it, I don't really care, honestly. Like,
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I love the game. It's just that's like something that really disappoints me because I feel like they could have, done a lot more.
you know, when we're talking about a game, it is important to talk about the things that do stick out that could have been better. So, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I'll admit that there is like a feeling of, I guess, low ambition
Mhm.
in what they're doing with this, where they just kind of took what they had and painted it a bit. That is true. It doesn't bother me enough to even really label it much of a complaint. I will say I liked what they did with the spells instead of normal grenades. I generally hate using grenades in any of the Borderlands games because I suck at aiming grenades for some reason. But the spells were really good. I enjoyed, and they're also way more varied than grenades. Like every grenade in Borderlands, you throw it and it explodes for the most part. Some of them have like some unique stuff, like pulls enemy in, or it releases like needles instead.
That's
But
true.
these spells, they all function in like a weird variety of ways, and there's different casting methods. I played the spell shot class, which was all about spells. So I got a lot of use out of spells, and I vastly prefer them to the grenades from Borderlands. To the point at which, whenever they make Borderlands 4, which I know that they will one day, I want them to do something way more interesting with grenades than what they currently have, because if I have to go back to the normal grenades of Borderlands, I'm going to be pretty disappointed.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
I mean, even as the guy here who picked the melee class, very quickly I found, it's actually really easy to cast spells and shoot at the same time. And that is absolutely devastating to anything standing in front of you usually. And it feels really good. Way better than grenades. I kind of have a chip on my shoulder about grenades after Borderlands 3, but I feel like I'll talk about Borderlands 3. I feel like we have to compare it at some point to Borderlands 3.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Spells are amazing, and I could totally see myself re-rolling another class and trying out the spell shot, because even as a class that I thought I'd never be using them, very early on I found that they're just so fun to use that I want to use them. So
yeah, absolutely. I think it's weird. I remember looking at so many reviews for this game, and the one really common thing that I kept seeing was that, this feels nothing like Borderlands.
bullshit.
It's like, my guy, are we playing the same fucking game? You're literally lying through your teeth. It's literally Borderlands.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're so full of shit.
It's just Borderlands with half a coat of paint on it.
Yeah, it's
Basically,
great.
yeah. Literally,
Like they put the primer on, they put the first coat, but they didn't finish putting on the second coat.
Yeah, sure.
The game itself is serviceable. It's really fun, and in my opinion, it's a lot better than Borderlands 3. I couldn't get into Borderlands 3. It wasn't for me. I didn't like the humor, I didn't like the writing, but this, I'm liking it, and I'm glad I can enjoy it.
So, I want to talk about my experience playing Borderlands 3 for a second. Nameless guest, you picked Flak. Pork Chopper, you picked Flak. I forget who you picked, Sliv. I think you also picked Flak for some reason.
I'm not sure.
I might pick Zane. As Mose, I looked at that tank and I said to myself, oh hey, it's just like Gunzerking from Borderlands 2. I have 2 separate weapons that I can swap out, do different things with the skill trees with, and I bet I could have a lot of fun with it. And I was, up till about level 15. And then the scaling on that thing fell right the fuck off. Using my action skill felt really bad in a Borderlands game. And it was like that for the duration of my time playing Borderlands 3. And then I found that there is a skill where if you get out of the tank, before it expires, there was another skill that if you killed things, you could extend the timer on the amount of time this tank is out. Well, it turns out that these 2 skills interacting, the sentry tank and the kill stuff for extended duration, was apparently a glitch that they patched out. And that really bothered me because I started having a lot of fun with this setup of turning this tank that was useless while I was controlling it into basically a big turret. I really liked having a big turret, and the Borderlands team essentially said, no, you're not supposed to play the character that way. Stop having fun. And I hated that. And then you'd get to late game with that character, and basically if I remember correctly, the best play for Moze was to just spam grenades. It was to invest in all the grenade skills, and it was boring as shit. I absolutely hated playing that character by the end of Borderlands 3, and it's one of the reasons I've never gone back to play the DLCs. Now, I'm sure I could probably have a bit of fun with Flak or Zane, but with all that said, I really like that in this game. I feel like if I if I absolutely have no fun with the skill tree of the class I picked, I could see myself having a reasonable actual endgame build with a dual class. Like, no matter what class you pick. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that's good. I will say, though, your situation is a little more unique compared to, well, not unique, but Moe's had that particular problem more than anyone in
Yes.
3. Because
No,
every other character had 3 different action skills, and when they introduced the 4th skill tree, which none of us were playing at that time, but whatever, 4 action skills. So everyone had way more variety, whereas Moe's only had the 1 action skill and different weapons in it. So that's a bit of an issue in that one, where most characters in 3, if you didn't like the 1 skill tree you were investing in, there was probably something good in the other 2 that you...
fully admit that my situation is unique, but I really love that I could pick the class that I would think is probably the least powerful, which personally I think is the Clawbringer, but Pork Chopper, you're having a lot of fun with the Clawbringer, so whatever.
Oh, fuck it.
You know, I could pick that class, and I could find a way to make that end game viable. That makes me want to stick with this game. That makes me want to get excited for the DLCs, and it makes me not feel like I'm wasting my time like I did in Borderlands 3.
So when it comes to the classes, I like that there's 6 of them, and I like that everyone can mix and match. So there's a lot. There's like 30 different class combinations or something. And that's really cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
But I will say I'm a little disappointed that each class only has 1 skill tree. If it was like every class has 2 skill trees, and then you have a multi-class, so everyone has a total of... So, like, you as a complete character have 4 skill trees total to work down. I think I would have liked that a bit better. Because right now, you're picking one of these 6 classes, and that is what you are, and then you have, like, a supplementary one that you invest a little bit in. It just feels like I have less variety. Even though I kind of have more variety, it's a bit of a weird feeling. And then there's also just some classes that, like, I look at their skill tree and I'm like, this looks like trash and I never want to touch it. Clawbringer.
Clawbringer.
It's fucking great.
Looks so bad.
I'm happy you are having fun with it, my friend, but I ain't touching it with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, it doesn't look that bad, but it's definitely like the bottom of my priority list in terms of trying stuff. Whereas in Borderlands 3, yeah, if you chose Amara, she has a skill tree that's all about melee, but she also has a skill tree that's all about status damage. And I forgot what her third one was, but that doesn't really matter.
It was tankiness for some reason.
I mean, yeah, that's probably what it was. She was a pretty tanky character. So there's a lot of variety in like the one character. I don't know. I like having lots of skill trees that I have access to that I can freely play around with as opposed to only 2. And you're not allowed to change your secondary class until you beat the game. So
yeah, and it's, I mean, immediately in the, like, not immediately, but like I had a pretty good time playing Berserker, going melee build up till about, I want to say level 15, where I'm like, okay, now there's all these wyverns and flying enemies, and melee isn't as fun as it used to be. And then when I got access to that second class, it's like, oh, now as a Spore Warden, I can change up my playstyle, and I can invest more into frost damage, and I can use the frost cyclones to just freeze the shit out of everything, and go for a more shooting, like go for like a shooting build. I like that every class has 2 action skills. Like, that's really rad.
I definitely like the 2 action skills, and thus, when you multi-class, you have 4 action skills.
Yeah.
I will say, one thing I also miss from Borderlands 3 is the action skill augments.
Yes.
In Borderlands 3, you could augment your action skills in a variety of ways. In this game, you cannot do that. Your action skill is very static and does not change at all. Whereas I liked in Borderlands 3, it was like, okay, I had this action skill, and I have like 4 different ways to modify it to my enjoyment.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this game does lack that, and that's a little unfortunate, because I think there's some action skills that could be really fun with a augmentation to it. Like the Spore Warden's bow, I played around with it a little bit, and I didn't really like it because I found that most of the arrows just missed enemies. Like you would hit two of them would hit an enemy, and the rest would just fly off uselessly elsewhere.
But that's probably killer on actual bosses.
Yeah, they're probably great on an actual boss because they're just, big and fat. But if there was like an augment somewhere where it's like, oh, these arrows have like a greater homing capacity or something, then I could think that skill would be like really amazing, and I would like to, but that's not a thing in this, so that's unfortunate.
Yeah, just wait for the DLC. They'll add shit that you'll have to pay for.
I mean, I hope they add stuff in the DLC because they're not gonna do it any other way, probably. Whether or not I buy the DLC, I'll have to see what they actually add and how I feel about it at the time, if I actually feel like continuing to play. But
yeah, fair.
So overall, the class system, I would say, is not necessarily an upgrade. It's like a side grade. It's like a lateral move in like some interesting ways, but they also dropped some things that I like. If every class had 2 skill trees and augments to action skills, I think this system would be just a straight upgrade and would be great. Oh, and the hero points thing is just a minor like stat increase to things, but it feels good. I like it. Although, whoever designed the backgrounds is an idiot. Like, they're just dumb. The background village idiot gives you +8 strength, -3 intelligence. So it's a +5 total. You get, like, an extra 5 points.
My girlfriend, immediately saw that, and she was like, why the fuck would I pick anything else?
Well, I didn't
pick that.
I didn't take that one on my character because I was running spells, so I actually needed intelligence. Yeah. So I picked a more neutral one for me. But then there's Raised by Elves, which is like -4 strength and +2 dex. So it's a -2 bonus in total.
I noticed that. It doesn't make any sense.
They gotta patch it. Like, it's just a fault.
It's just stupid.
It's just dumb. Like, that cannot be what's intended. I'm sorry.
No. I just think that they're incompetent at points. Like, I don't know. I have a weirdly low amount of faith in Gearbox, and I honestly think that Borderlands is like an accident.
Speaking of a weirdly low amount of faith in Gearbox, I want to kind of bring up something that might make everyone here groan. So just bear with me for a hot minute. I like that this game has representation in it. And I'm not saying that to like check any boxes or anything like that. I mean, like, coming from a game like Haven that I've talked about, where they've made this game and I thought it was pretty shit, and its reviews were pretty meh, and everyone basically told them that your combat system needs to be upgraded. And instead of actually fixing the game, they added a mode where you can play as a gay or lesbian couple, which is dumb for a lot of reasons, but feels like it's there to pander to people to get them to buy that game. I like that representation here doesn't feel like a selling point. It feels like it's just kind of part of the world, and that it doesn't need a reason to be here. Like, it wasn't to like say, oh man, we have it here to like make people feel better about playing the game. It's just there. I think that's cool. And yeah, it's not something we talk about because I don't know. We usually just don't talk about stuff like that, but
I mean, I agree. I think
I
it's
just
cool because they put
I
it in
think
there.
it just does it well. I like that it has, three, like, it has different pronouns and stuff like that. And yeah, I like that it has gay and lesbian and cool.
Yeah.
I'm really shit at making my point here, but there it is.
Well, you made it just fine. Like they put it in the game and they didn't make a big deal out of it, and that's actually a
Yeah.
good thing.
And that's all it needed to be.
It didn't feel like pandering. It's
Yeah.
not like Gearbox was coming up to you and going like, "Hey guys, we added gay people. Aren't we so great?"
Which is hilarious because the plot of Borderlands 3 feels so girl power, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does a little bit.
Like,
I mean, they might have taken a lot of feedback on board after
Yeah.
Borderlands 3, and you can see that with this game.
it's interesting to me that they both went a step forward and they went a step forward in that direction without making it a huge selling point, and that's cool.
You brought up the things that they learned from Borderlands 3. So I guess we should talk about what was Borderlands 3's biggest flaw, which was its
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this game still has the Borderlands humor, which some people find incredibly obnoxious, and that's totally fair because it oftentimes actually can be incredibly obnoxious. But I found this game's writing, as the only person here who's actually completed it, was so much better than Borderlands 3. At no point was I super annoyed at what the hell was going on. And this game still has Claptrap, and I wasn't too annoyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I came across Claptrap, and he actually was not that annoying.
No, Claptrap's whole point is that he's supposed to be annoying, so he has to be annoying to some extent. But he definitely was not as aggravating as he can be sometimes. He's a character that you have to walk a really fine line in order to use.
Yeah.
And I feel that this game did it a lot better. I admit, I didn't find this game to be that funny when they were definitely trying to be funny. It had a humorous tone, but at no point was I bursting out laughing. But I also wasn't cringing, which is what happened fairly common
Just-
in 3.
Fairly
And
common, too.
parts
Literally
of 2.
start to
And parts of 2. I mean, again, 2 is not as bad as 3 is really where people went, "What the hell are you guys doing?"
Yeah, 2, I think for the most part, the writing was actually pretty good, whereas 3, it's just start to finish super fucking cringy.
So this one definitely did it a lot better, but overall I thought its ending was decent. This is all kind of comparative to 3, where 3's ending pissed me off really hard, mostly because I just hate Lilith as a character.
Cool, man.
So, unnamed guest, because you've actually finished the game, I do have a question for you.
Yes.
So, this game, unlike the Borderlands games, has no new game plus, and it's replaced it with some challenge.
Yes.
What is your take, and do you think that was a good idea or a mistake?
It is a mistake to not have the new game plus, because in this game everything level scales to you, no matter what. So you only needed one new game plus mode, and it would just be called, True Fate Maker mode or whatever. We just play through the game at max level, and some people like doing that, especially because there's some unique pieces of equipment that you get as rewards for quests. And some people might want a level 40 variant of that weapon or spell or something. So it's kind of lame that people can't get that. So It is just a straight mistake to not have the new game plus. There's still random encounters and stuff, and there is the new bonus thing. But it would have been nice to continue to have it. And to be perfectly honest, I fully expect it to be added at some point in the future. I don't think that they're going to stick with this mindset. It'll be added in a DLC or something, because people will be like, "We want new game plus, why do you not have it?" The new thing is called chaos mode, and it's basically doing the random encounters in the game. It'll stick you in an arena and you kill enemies. That's perfectly fine, because the game is at its best when you're in an area with lots of enemies to kill. And there's modifiers and stuff. You finish a level and it's You can get more rewards if you make it so the enemies are stronger in some way. So I only ran through it like once or twice, and like some things I got were enemies were stronger when they were close together. So the more enemies that were in a group, the stronger the group was. So you wanted to keep the enemies apart, which there really isn't much like area control. So it was more just you wanted to kill enemies really fast, which you want to do anyway. But it was a neat little thing. And you can spend, there's like a currency that you build up as you go through the run. You can spend it to get upgrades as well as you do it. So it kind of becomes kind of roguelike in its nature. It's like a roguelike endless mode at the end of the game that you do with like 4 people. Obviously, you can do it alone. And then at the like when you finish it, you have a bunch of these crystal shards, and you can spend it on stuff. And you can choose what to spend it on. Like there's like a statue that has an assault rifle, and you feed the crystals into it, and you will get an assault rifle out of it. So you can kind of pick and choose what you want, what you get, as well as all the enemies are still dropping random loot. So you still have the randomness to it. And I didn't explore it too much. I assume there's like more difficulty modifiers, and the more difficulty modifiers you put on, the better gear you get. So it's probably hit some like endless progression loop. So I think it's a good mode. Like it should be there. There's nothing wrong with it. It definitely should be there. But there still should have been a New Game Plus. There's no reason not to do that.
Yeah,
That's fair. I think I know why they went this route, but yeah, they should have still done New Game Plus.
I think I know that why they went this route as well. It's because Randy Pitchford dropped the New Game Plus USB at medieval times again.
No, it's because they published Godfall, and Godfall went this route where instead of having New Game Plus, I forget what the mode was called, but basically it was like a roguelike sort of mode at the end of the game where you go through like endless waves and shit, and it's essentially the same kind of idea that they've done here with Tiny Tina's. Now Godfall failed, so they might have already realized that it wasn't a good idea, but because they only had a year left before the game was coming out, they probably didn't have enough time to, scrap that and do something else.
in either scenario, I'm very interested to try it out with you guys once we all do actually beat this fucking game.
Oh yeah, once you guys get there, we should definitely play it. Although,
Yeah,
I will say, it is really weird that they didn't add a New Game Plus mode. The game already scales to your level.
Yeah.
So they don't
It's
have to
pretty
do
easy.
They don't have to do anything but effectively kind of create like a pseudo new save for your max level character and run through the game again, because everything scales to you, so it doesn't matter. It's already built into the system.
There's a lot of points in this game playing it from release really felt like it needed maybe a week or two more to iron out a lot more kinks. And I don't know.
yeah, the fucking
Like,
servers definitely did.
how many glitches have we found? How many, all those connection errors. I don't know if I could chalk it up to time or, I don't know, just them focusing on this new mode, but yeah, it's weird. Why don't you send me off to an early grave, Bust?
It was sending you off to an early grave, Kaz.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make you re-roll your character sheet. I'm not letting you come back from this. You're gonna have to live with it, aight?
Okay.
Thank you for joining us on the Wonderlands today. Remember to like and subscribe and follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/THNDRCLUB. We also are on Twitch, almost never, but we do have Twitch at twitch.tv/ThunderClub. Thank you for joining us today. I have been Sliv, and with me has been Kaznarius,
I rolled a 20 and I need to take a shit.
the Pork Chopper,
See you later.
and the Nameless Guest.
This was a mistake.
Everything's been a mistake. This has been since day one. Kaz just shat on the tabletop. I think we're fucked. Good night, everybody.